je termine par là en disant qu'un journaliste vivant est plus utile qu'un journaliste mort. On a beau faire ce qu'on a à faire, il faut juste dire qu'on est plus utile en étant en vie. Donc il faut vivre avec nos contextes et être utile en considérant que le droit, l'information, ce n'est pas simplement un droit, mais c'est aussi un bien public qu'il va falloir protéger. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. On va peut-être prendre 2 questions maximum, s'il y en a encore dans la salle. Autant pour moi. Si des questions restent, n'hésitez pas à venir voir nos panélistes qui, je pense, seront très heureux de répondre aux dernières questions que vous pourrez avoir. Merci à tous d'avoir suivi cette session et je vous laisse avec les Zambiens.
Merci beaucoup Julia, merci beaucoup aux panélistes. Et je pense que l'idée c'est aussi d'arriver à permettre ces échanges de façon à ce que des relations puissent se créer, de voir comment est-ce que le travail peut être fait en synergie. Donc merci beaucoup et j'étais très inquiet tout à l'heure avec la dernière phrase de Patient lorsqu'il a dit qu'un journaliste vivant vaut mieux qu'un journaliste mort, simplement parce qu'après il a dit on a beau faire, je pensais qu'il disait en lingala qu'il ne voulait pas mourir, nabo nakufa. Donc je pense que c'était ça ma crainte, mais je pense qu'il a fini par dire autre chose. Et juste avant de passer sur le prochain panel, donc s'il y a quelqu'un qui a perdu une bague, une alliance, pour ne pas avoir de problème à la maison le soir, donc on l'a ici, donc de venir pour récupérer. Donc il y a une alliance qui est là et on pourra le lui remettre. Donc voilà, merci beaucoup. Je pense que là on va passer, je vais vous demander de pouvoir mettre le casque pour ceux qui ne sont pas à l'aise en anglais, parce que la dernière session qui va commencer avec les Zambiens, on aura besoin de la traduction. So for this session, I'm going to call Gabriel Bourdon to moderate this session. I think that we're going to have the delegation from South Africa. They are here in the room, so if you can come in front of, it's going to be very interesting. And then we have people representing Zambia. They're going to by Zoom. So if you can use, si vous pouvez utiliser les écouteurs, ça serait mieux. Gabriel?
Are the Zambians with us? Welcome.
Donc quelques soucis techniques et... I think maybe we can start with South Africa when we are trying to make sure if Zambian they're going to be connected. So.
All right. So last section, but definitely not the least important one. We have a great luck today to have people from South Africa and Zambia coming with us to share their experience about the legislation in their respective countries. We'll start with our friends from South Africa here. South Africa is a really interesting example. It has the first whistleblowing law in Africa, the Protected Disclosures Act, the PDA, since the early 2000s. And it also has an immense whistleblowing culture. So we know that civil society in South Africa, authorities, media, all work with and understand whistleblowers, and there are a lot of cases of whistleblowing, small or big, in the past year. Particularly, PLAF has worked with state capture whistleblowers, who led to President Zuma resigning in 2018. So this is a very interesting case study to learn from. More specifically with us, we have Amukelani Josephine Baloy, Legal Administration Officer at the Department of Public Services and Administration, the DPSA. She has been employed in the department for 9 years and has been responsible for drafting laws such as the Public Service Act, the Public Service Regulations, and the Public Administration Management Act. Next to me, we have Moses Kutu. Mr. Kutu has been working in the Unit Ethics of Integrity Disciplinary Technical Assistance Unit since 2012 and has more than 30 years in South African public service. Mrs. Kutu is responsible for promoting ethics and integrity, implementation support, capacity building, and technical support. Mr. Kutu is responsible for supporting 45 national departments and 106 provincial departments. Mr. I will let you start. Please, go ahead.
Bote Nabino, I hope I got that right. Bonjour, good afternoon. As introduced, my name is Amukelani Baloyi. My colleague and I will be taking you through our presentation. If we can just ask that it be lighted, please. While they load our presentation, I am from Soweto, born and raised there. And most of our homes in Soweto, we don't own guns, but we have whistles. And what we do with these whistles is when a bad guy comes into your house and tries to steal, you blow the whistle and the community comes out to help and we all fight the bad guy. I am so honored to be here because I feel like that's what we are doing, putting whistles into people's hands and saying to them, blow them. And when you do, we as your country and the community will come and help fight that bad guy. Oh, sorry. It will be so helpful.
1 minute, sorry. Nos excuses, petit souci technique.
Okay, there we go. You have our presentation on the screen. On the 23rd of August, 2021, a woman dropped her daughter off at school. And she did what most of us do when we drop our children at school. She made the promise that she will see her daughter later. This woman had every intention of keeping that promise. But when she drove back home in the suburb of Winchester Hills, she was gunned down by 6 gunmen who planted 9 bullets in her body, killing her instantly. This woman's name was Babita Diokaram. She was a mother, she was a wife, she was a government official, and most of all, she was a whistleblower. I'm going to use Ms. Diokaram's story to tell you about the laws that we have in South Africa. My colleague will take over from me in the presentation where he will be talking about other aspects of whistleblowing. Ms. Diokaram understood that in South Africa we have laws. First of all, laws that prohibit corruption, and second of all, laws that makes provision for instances where people can report such corruption. South Africa is a democratic country. We have a constitution, and one of the principles that are enshrined in our constitution is that we must have a high standard of professional ethics that must be maintained and protected and promoted and maintained, pardon me. Yesterday in one of the sessions, there was a question that was asked about the link between the constitution and the laws that were spoken about. Our constitution is written in such a way that it makes provision for national legislation to be enacted to give effect to the principles which are enshrined in the constitution. So one such legislation is the Public Service Act. In his introduction, our moderator mentioned that that is one of the legislation that I am responsible for drafting. And what that legislation does is it gives our Minister of Public Service and Administration, I think now I'm at the third slide, please. Thank you. So what the Public Service Act does, it gives the Minister of Public Service and Administration the authority to set norms and standards within the public service which relate to integrity, ethics, conduct, and anti-corruption within the public service. So in the next slide, you will see that the Minister of Public Service and Administration has set norms and standards in terms of the regulations that we have highlighted here. So in our country, when you are a public servant, there's an obligation on you, first of all, to report conduct of corruption, nepotism, maladministration, and any other act which constitutes a contravention of the law. So all public servants have that obligation in terms of our law. We further have an obligation of public servants to report instances of non-compliance with the Act. In most of the sessions that we have had, there was a lot of talk regarding the amendment and strengthening of laws. We have also worked on our laws to strengthen them. So prior to November last year, the regulation that is marked Regulation 14Q, provision for a public servant to report non-compliance of the Act to an HOD. But then we realized that there was a gap in our law because our law was not written in such a way that you could report non-compliance by an HOD to somebody higher than the HOD. So we have amended the law to strengthen it to ensure that even when it's the HOD who breaks the law, employees are able to report. We have another provision within our public service where we compel heads of departments to create a system where employees and the public can use that system to report acts of so the system basically
Alors, le système permet aux employés Alors, comme je l'ai dit, nous avons des lois dans notre pays, mais malheureusement pour Madame Joe, elle est juste, lorsqu'elle parlait du processus interne, elle n'a jamais eu l'opportunité de parler du processus externe concernant le lancement d'alerte. Parce que nous avons identifié en tant que pays les ressources internes peuvent marcher parfois et parfois ça ne marche pas. Alors nous avons et ces lois sont cette loi place une obligation sur les personnes pour de reporter, de parler contre toute personne officielle. Nous avons aussi... cette loi donne aux employés